Maria Pallotta Chiarolli, mobs and wogs. What is this?
Sì, mobs and wogs sono parole che some people think, I'm going to speak English and Italian, excuse me, mostly dialetto. So we're looking at, what we're doing is we're looking at mobs, which are Aboriginal people, First Nations, First Peoples in Australia, with also their relationships with Southern European, Italian, Greek and Maltese heritage. Some of the similarities, which is very much like the event that we're going to be doing on the 11th at Coazet, but also some of the differences, what brought a lot of people together, because there were many Italians, especially Greeks and Maltese, who would get married to be in relationships with, but also were also colonizers. They were sometimes assaulting, harassing First Nations women. So we're exploring family history.
Well, we've had a few connections with the intermarriage. Well, first of all, my wife's family, their name is Ajus, which is apparently a very, very common Maltese name. Apparently like Smith, but it's very, I think it's very common amongst the Aboriginal community.
Yes.
There've been some very good
especially in
players.
Adelaide, South Australia, the Ghana people. Yeah.
Yeah. But also one of my regular guests is Michele Scarcella, mother Aboriginal, father Italian. And we've also had a chat with the gentleman who was talking about his book, Pasta and Goanna. About having had his experience meeting Aboriginals in Western Australia, who came from an Italian father, grandfather. Yes. Okay. So you said, but not all of the interactions were so positive.
Unfortunately, no. And look, we've got amazing people here like Paola Morabito, who's an incredible artist, Dr. Paola Balla, whose father was Calabrese, mother Wemba, and Chinese. We've also got beautiful Italian women who belong to the Ascolta, Italian women's group like Gracie Lollicato, whose partner is Jessie Thorpe, Senator Lydia Thorpe's nephew. So they're incredible people who've come from very strong cultures. Unfortunately, we also have to truth tell that there were things that were happening on this land, especially, unfortunately, for migrant men who were out in rural areas working. And there was rape, there was assault. I did go to the archives in Alice Springs and I saw some names, Antonio, that were too familiar and of things that they had done. There's also history that we haven't really thought about. For example, at the Coazet event, I'll be talking about the Kaurna. There was a prisoner of war camp for the Italian and Japanese in Kaurna. When you go to Kaurna, there was a prison already there, and that was the Arambi mission for the Wurundjeri people. And when the Italians went there, the Italians had far more rights, working on farms, traveling around the town. And Anita Heiss has written an incredible book called Cherry Orchards and Barbed Wire, where she looks at the Italian prisoners of war from the eyes of the Wurundjeri people who are stuck, imprisoned in the Arambi mission. So this is part of the project. We're going to actually explore the good, the bad, the ugly of all our cultures coming together. And we're going to be looking at LGBT, IQ, Aboriginal Italian, like Dominic Guerrera, who is a gay Ghana, Italian young gay activist and writer in Adelaide.
I was going to say, the name is, I recognise the name. I have engaged with him, but we haven't managed to meet in person yet.
Very busy young person.
Yes, that's
navigating
true.
Lots of different communities and artworks. Yes.
So you're talking about the project and what it's doing. So at what stage are you in the project?
Yeah, well, most of the stories are now collected. So we are. The other thing is we're working as a team because I don't have First Peoples I'm not Aboriginal First Peoples. So my job is to be very careful, respectful, listen to the stories, help collate the stories. So my job is to pull it together. We've got amazing people in this book. And then also look at my own history as a Southern Italian, what the Italians did, unfortunately, in North Africa. We know the history, the truth-telling, which is coming from incredible young Italian scholars from Italy who come to Australia, some of them, who are doing this incredible work. So my job is to pull it all together. My history, the history of Italians, Greeks, and Maltese here, such as the Ajus families, and as I said, truth tell, but also truth listen to the wonderful relationships that were also happening, such as Eduardo Crismani, who also lives in Adelaide, filmmaker. His father was from Northern Italy. His mother was, I think, Wemba. I'm not sure. I'm so sorry. And they fell in love and raised their children together. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, we'll need to connect with these people because I want to hear and listen to these stories and talk about them.
They're very important for us as migrants and colonizers.
Especially to help us.
History.
Yes, and to help us understand the thinking and the importance of the voice, having the voice in Parliament. It will be very important. I want to make that important part of this program in the next few months, or whenever it takes to get this reform.
That's what I love about your program, that you do actually create spaces to have these discussions. Very important.
So you've already collected these stories. So there's a very advanced stage of research, and I guess you can use that word research. And you are starting to disseminate them. Are they going to be produced as a book, as books, as articles?
Yes, it's going to be. We've had a couple of articles out, and if anyone who contacts me, I can make the articles freely available, or contacts you, Antonio, and lets me know. But we're now going to put together a book to be published by Wakefield Press there in Adelaide. We want to get these stories together, and then after that, I will hand over the project to First Peoples, and First Peoples will then take the project. For example, Marlene Shikluna, who was stolen generation into a Maltese family, is an SBS writer, filmmaker. Paolo. So we've got incredibly creative people. My job as an ally will be to collect, put it out there, and then we hope it's going to create more activism, more writing.
More writing and more stories being told and heard, listened to.
And also, Antonio, can I say, like when I went to Kaurna, and because my uncle was a prisoner of war in the Kaurna prisoner of war camp. So there are all these.
So you are talking about, sorry to interrupt, you are talking about prisoner of war, not internship.
Not internship. So he was caught in Libya and he was brought over to India and then to Australia to work on New South Wales farms. Now, when I went to Kaurna, and I've been there twice now, I was very concerned again. I'm thinking of Joseph Pugliese's work and Francesco Ricatti. There were so many monuments to the Italians, but there was not one monument, not one memorial to the Wurundjeri people who were there before us. Now, this is the kind of problem that I think Italians need to come to terms with, that we are putting up our memorials, but we are not remembering who else was there and on whose land we arrived. So that would be part of the project, to go, this is a prisoner of war camp. We respect our Italian prisoners, but we are not showing respect from Italy or from Australian Italians to say all this was happening on Wurundjeri land.
Okay, this is a good spot to have a little pause, have some messages from our sponsors, and I'll come back to talk to Maria Pallotta Chiarolli here on Radio Italia Uno Adelaide. State ascoltando Radio Italia Uno Adelaide, and now we'll come back to Maria Pallotta Chiarolli. Now, you're talking about Wurundjeri peoples earlier, and I see Wurundjeri country in your your name tag there. Is that where you are, or where you're from?
Yes, I am. I'm in, the European name is Melbourne, which is Naarm, and Wurundjeri country is where I am. It's where the country that belonged to the Wurundjeri people in Melbourne. Now, one of our elders is, again, Mob and Wog. One of our elders, Annette Shiberas, Wurundjeri mother, strong activist Wurundjeri mother, and Maltese father, and identifies as a lesbian, raising children. So again, respecting every facet of her life, that we come to this country and need to understand and respect. This is unceded land.
Unceded land. And actually, given what you were saying earlier and the names you're mentioning, I guess a lot of the problems, so to speak, would have been felt by. Hi, Mark. Say hello to our guest. And you will appear on the.
You're going to appear on the show. Welcome
on the podcast.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I've actually just got to put and it's just under. But lovely to meet you. I'll let Antonio get back to what he does.
Everyone's welcome. Everyone's welcome. This is the point. Diversity, inclusion.
Yes. So going back to these families that I mentioned that were created, they were the positive stories, but there were many others that were not so positive. So is there a gender dimension to this project?
Yes, there is. Unfortunately, a lot of our heterosexual or straight identifying migrant Italian men who found themselves in rural areas, remote areas, there was assault of First Nations women. There was rape. We know that there are, as I said, I read some.
You did mention some cases in Alice Springs.
Even the prisoners of war, like we know that there are Italian prisoners of war who were taking time off. That the guards knew They were leaving the camp and they'd be going off to Aboriginal women, but never claiming their children.
Well, I guess you reminded me that I guess when they were at war or in the front, the men were given bromide tablets to try to keep their instincts at bay. Yes. So anyway, you said we'll talk about this more hopefully in future. I said you have an event at Coasit. Can you tell us something a bit about that?
It's so exciting. I'm really honoured. So Teresa Capitola, who's our founder of the Ascolta Women's Group, and Paolo Baracchi and Ferdinando Colarossi from Coasit have given me an opportunity, have invited me to invite incredible Italians. So we wanted to look at Italians made in Italy, who grew up in Italy, who come to Australia, and then the Italians who were made here and grew up here. And we want to look at our similarities and differences. What do we still hold precious? What do we celebrate in our cultures? But what are some things that we have to come to terms with in our cultures? And what's our world view as Italians out in the world, in America, Canada? And we're going to be looking at things such as First Nations. So First Nations in Canada, America here. We're going to be looking at the Me Too movement, misogyny, gender politics in Italy and here. We're going to be looking at LGBTIQA+ rights in Italy and here. And for someone like me who grew up in Australia, I had quite conservative understandings of Italian culture. What I have found amazing is all these young scholars such as Sara Bavato, Francesca Rizzoli, Matteo Vergani coming to Australia, and they have taught me the movements, the activism going on in Italy. So there's some of the speakers. Matteo's going to be looking at hate crimes and international violence. Francesca Rizzoli is a doco maker and a journalist for SBS. Now she is about to screen a documentary on two amazing trans women. It's a love story of Lisette and Gail Clermont-Goulet. And I want to ask, how does an Italian heterosexual woman, young woman from Italy, arrive in Australia, become great friends with Lisette and Gail, and end up making this documentary to be screened on SBS next year? So they're the kinds of stories like, what have we gained from our culture? What do we need to disrupt in our cultures? And how do we pull this together? Archimede Fusillo, Archie Fusillo, is renowned for his work on young Italian men growing up in Australia. You know, what was it about being a boy, a man in Australia? What were some of the assumptions, the homophobia, the good things, the intergenerational? So Antonio Romanelli is a papa, a nonno, gay activist, educator. And now he loves, for him, Italian is being family, community. But he is gay, and he wants Italians to recognize and respect his sexuality, his partner, his family. So we're going to have some very interesting conversations in Coasit.
Quite a few interesting dimensions there. Well, best wishes. I can't come to the event on at Coasit.
It is going to be on Zoom. It is on Zoom, so you can register to be online. Yeah.
So maybe we can pursue that. Very interesting. Yeah. And maybe we'll have some more of those conversations over time. Yeah. And as I said, we'd like to connect with some of these Italian Aboriginals that are present in LA and South Australia to hear their stories and
and there are some stories. Thank you, Antonio. Yes. And there are some stories I can't tell, like I can't name the people who've said things like, I can just give you one example. Mildura is renowned as an Italian place of growing orchards and vineyards, and we know that there were some Aboriginal women there, muti women, who ended up pregnant with Italian young men, but the Italian families would not recognise the children and banished. Yeah. Now, this is stuff that we need to acknowledge in our culture, that this was happening, but we've got to respect that we're not going to create problems for the Italians or the Aboriginal people in doing this work, but we need to own it.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, again, thank you very much, Maria Pallotta Chiarolli.
Thank you, Antonio.
And
thank you so much.
We need to move on now. The next program is about to start, and we will continue this conversation.
Please, that'll be wonderful. And I'd love to see everybody at the event and ask you questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ciao.